Captain Alara Kincaid stood at the helm of the Aegis, her battle-scarred starship, watching the dark void of space stretch before her. The hum of the engines, once a reassuring sound, now felt like a constant reminder of Earth's impending doom. The Galactic Empire had launched its final assault. Their fleet was nearing Earth's orbit, and with it, their superweapon, the extermination array. Alara knew what that meant. Total annihilation for humanity. The Galactic Empire, a coalition of alien species that had crushed countless civilizations, believed humanity to be an anomaly, primitive, unpredictable, and utterly incapable of matching the might of the Empire. But they had made one grave mistake. They had underestimated humanity's resilience. Alara had seen it firsthand. She had led her forces through impossible odds, yet every time, humanity had found a way to rise again. But this time felt different. The countdown to the extermination array's activation was ticking in her mind. They think it's over. Alara clenched her fists. They think we'll just fold under pressure, like every other species before us. They're wrong. This time, we will make them understand the one thing they never expected from us. She turned to face her crew, each one of them displaying the same grim determination that had driven them for years. The Empire may have crushed countless worlds, but they had never faced a foe like humanity. They had never faced the anger, the will to survive that coursed through every human being. We're almost there, Alara's voice was steady, though her mind raced. Once we breach their defenses, we unleash the protocol. Are we ready? The room fell silent. Then, one by one, her crew nodded. No words needed to be said. They all understood what the annihilation protocol entailed. It wasn't just a weapon, it was humanity's darkest weapon, designed not to fight, but to destroy everything in its path. The protocol had been in development for years. A weapon fueled by humanity's collective rage, despair, and survival instincts. It had the power to break not just an enemy's forces but their very will to resist. When activated, it would send waves of energy capable of shattering their morale, disintegrating their resolve. The Empire's ships, their leaders, their entire infrastructure would crumble, as humanity's anger broke them from within. The Aegis shuddered as it made its way toward the heart of the enemy fleet. The Empire's massive warships, sleek and cold, dwarfed their own forces, but that was where the problem began. The Empire's cold, methodical way of war was its greatest strength, and its most significant weakness. The Aegis had been built to exploit that weakness, to create chaos, to instill fear. Alara had witnessed firsthand how unpredictability, a human trait, could turn the tide of battle. This wasn't about tactics anymore. It was about sending a message. A siren blared, signaling the first wave of enemy ships. The crew of the Aegis prepared for impact. Alara tightened her grip on the console, her pulse steady. All hands, brace for impact. Hold your ground. As the Empire's fleet came into view, massive and overwhelming, Alara didn't hesitate. Activate the Matrix. The ship hummed with energy as the Annihilation Matrix was engaged. The air in the control room seemed to thicken as the energy grew, drawing from the collective fear and rage of every human on board. In the past, the Matrix had been tested in simulations, but now it would be unleashed for real. On the view screen, the first wave of enemy ships advanced. Alara watched with cold resolve as her crew began to track them. The fleet was massive, but the Empire's arrogance would be their downfall. They had no idea what was about to hit them. The Matrix activated, sending a surge of raw, untamed energy pulsing through the system. For a brief moment, there was silence. Then, it hit. The shockwave rippled out, striking the first enemy ship. The massive vessel trembled, its shields flickering as the wave of energy struck. It wasn't the traditional firepower that the Empire was used to. It wasn't about force, it was about breaking them down. Inside the ship, the crew began to panic. Communications were lost, weapons malfunctioned, and their leadership faltered. Continue the attack, Alara barked, her voice unwavering. The Empire's forces had no idea what was coming next. the Matrix pulsed again, and another enemy ship faltered, its engines sputtering as the crew inside succumbed to fear. Alara didn't need to see the chaos unfolding on the battlefield. She could feel it in the vibrations of her own ship, in the way her crew moved with purpose, every action synchronized with the terror they were unleashing on the enemy. Alara turned to her communications officer. "Send the signal. Let every ship in the fleet know what we're doing." The officer hesitated for a moment before nodding, a solemn look crossing his face. The Aegis wasn't just a military ship anymore. It had become the heart of humanity's defiance. The signal was broadcast across the battlefield. A simple message: we don't fight. We annihilate. The Empire's ships hesitated. For the first time, they felt something they had never encountered before: fear. Not fear of losing, but fear of the unknown. The humans had tapped into something beyond mere combat. It wasn't just the destruction of ships or cities they were dealing with, it was the destruction of their very sense of invincibility. The Empire had spent centuries crushing civilizations. But this was different. The humans were no longer the underdog. They were the storm, the earthquake, the fire that consumed everything in its path. Alara watched, her eyes steely, as the battle unfolded. The Empire's fleet, once so confident, now faltered. Some ships tried to flee, their captains realizing too late that they were dealing with an enemy who didn't fight by any rules they understood. But it wasn't enough. The Annihilation Protocol was already having its effect. One by one, Empire ships turned to chaos. Their commanders couldn't control their forces. Soldiers on the ground, once loyal to the Empire, abandoned their posts. The Empire's military might was disintegrating, not from superior firepower but from the human instinct, the primal drive to survive, to destroy. Humanity wasn't just fighting back, they were making the Empire feel the crushing weight of their own vulnerability. The Empire's flagship, the Black Maw, loomed large in the distance. Alara's gaze locked onto it. That was where Emperor Zarati sat, overseeing the destruction of Earth. And that was where humanity's ultimate test lay. If they could tear the heart out of the Empire, if they could force Zaratis to confront the one thing his empire could never understand, they would win. But it wasn't just about destroying his ship, it was about making him understand that humanity didn't fight. They annihilated. The Aegis surged forward, its weapons locked on the flagship. Alara's hand tightened on the controls. "Prepare to board. This ends now." As the Aegis advanced, the crew braced themselves. What they had unleashed was more than just a weapon, it was humanity's last stand. The message had been sent, and it was clear, the Galactic Empire had miscalculated, and now, humanity was coming for them with everything they had. This time, there would be no surrender. Only annihilation. Alara stood at the command console, her gaze fixed on the view screen as the Empire's flagship the Black Maw grew larger, filling the screen. The weight of her decision was heavy. She had led humanity's forces to the edge of annihilation, but now, the final moment had arrived. The Black Maw was the heart of the Empire's power, and its destruction would mark the end of their tyranny. Behind her, the crew of the Aegis moved with precision, executing her orders without hesitation. The Annihilation Matrix had already proven itself effective against the Empire's ships, but this was different. The flagship was unlike anything they had faced before. It wasn't just a ship, it was a symbol of the Empire's unbreakable rule. "Prepare to launch," Alara commanded, her voice low but steady. "This is it. We end this now." The officers around her nodded, their faces grim but resolute. They had seen what the Matrix could do, its power was unlike anything the Empire could comprehend. But they all knew that taking down the flagship would require more than just raw force. They had to dismantle the Empire's entire structure, piece by piece. "We've breached their defenses," the tactical officer called out. "We've got a direct line to their communications array. We're in position." Alara's hand tightened on the edge of the console. She was ready to strike, but the question remained, would this be enough to break them? Would the Annihilation Protocol work on the heart of the Empire? She couldn't afford to hesitate. Not now. "Activate the Matrix," Alara ordered, her voice unwavering. There was a brief pause, then the ship trembled as the Matrix came online. The hum of energy filled the room, building steadily. The protocol was about to take its full form, a flood of power coursing through the ship's systems. It wasn't just about breaking their ships, it was about breaking their will. Alara had seen it in the chaos, how the energy tore apart the Empire's resolve, how their own forces turned on them. But the Black Maw was different. This was their leader's ship, his pride. Would the protocol break it, too? Without warning, the Aegis launched forward, hurtling toward the Black Maw like a bullet fired from a gun. The flagship, which had once seemed invincible, now seemed distant and fragile, its vast form dwarfed by the sheer force of humanity's rage. Every second counted. The Matrix would need to work fast. "Brace for impact," Alara shouted, her eyes fixed on the distant flagship. The two ships collided in a storm of energy. Alara's vessel slammed into the Black Maw with a tremendous force, a shockwave that rippled across the battlefield. The ship's hull groaned in protest as energy rippled through the systems. The Aegis had locked onto its target, its boarding party already in position. The Empire's defenses had faltered, but they weren't out of the fight yet. "We're in," the officer called out. Alara didn't wait for confirmation. She stormed toward the exit, her boots echoing through the steel corridors. She had a job to do, and it was time to end it. The rest of the crew would handle the outside conflict, her mission was within. The heart of the Empire had to be reached. She was the only one who could do it. As Alara made her way through the hallway, she could hear the chaos outside. The Black Maw was in disarray. But that wasn't enough. The Empire needed to see what humanity was capable of. They needed to feel what it was like to be completely, utterly powerless. "All units, advance," Alara ordered through the comms. "Take them down, one by one." She reached the control room doors, and without hesitation, she kicked them open. Inside, Empire officers scrambled, their faces a mixture of disbelief and terror. Alara didn't give them time to react. With a quick, fluid motion, she pulled her weapon from its holster and fired, the energy blast cutting through the air. One officer dropped to the ground, silenced instantly. "Who's next?" Alara's voice was cold, commanding. The remaining officers froze, fear in their eyes. They hadn't expected humanity to be this brutal, this relentless. They thought they were fighting for order. They thought they had everything under control. But humanity? Humanity was chaos incarnate, and they were about to see that firsthand. "Do you understand now?" Alara sneered as she stepped closer to the remaining officers. "You thought you could defeat us. But you're wrong. You don't understand what drives us. You never have." The officers attempted to retaliate, but Alara's speed was unmatched. She fired again, hitting her target square in the chest, silencing him instantly. The others scrambled to react, but it was too late. Alara was already upon them, her movements fast, her strikes precise. They couldn't match her agility, her sheer will to survive. "Humanity is a force of nature," Alara muttered under her breath, her eyes burning with fury. "We don't fight to win. We fight to annihilate." She advanced toward the central control panel, the heart of the Empire's power. As her fingers hovered over the buttons, she hesitated for a brief moment. The weight of the decision was heavy, but she knew what had to be done. Destroy them all. There could be no mercy. Her hand slammed down on the final button. The Matrix powered up once again, its energy coursing through the entire flagship. The Black Maw shuddered as the blast from the protocol pulsed outward. The energy wasn't just directed at the ship's systems, it was aimed directly at the Empire's leadership, its very core. Inside the flagship, the crew felt the pulse of energy, and their spirits shattered. The officers' resolve broke. Their panic was immediate. They had no idea how to combat this new kind of warfare. Their ships, their weapons, their technologies were no match for humanity's primal rage. The protocol had worked. In the heart of the command center, Alara stood, watching as the energy from the Matrix pulsed through every corridor, every crevice of the ship. It tore through the Empire's technological backbone, leaving nothing but chaos in its wake. The flagship, once an unassailable fortress, began to fall apart. Its crew, its command structure, everything was disintegrating under the weight of the human spirit. "The end is here," Alara said quietly, her voice barely a whisper. "And it's ours." The Black Maw had been reduced to nothing. The Empire's greatest symbol of power had been wiped from existence. Alara could feel it in the air, the tension was gone. The battle was won. But as she stood there, watching the destruction unfold, a strange feeling washed over her. She had destroyed the Empire, yes. But at what cost? Had humanity lost something in the process? The rage, the fear, it had consumed everything. She looked out the viewport as the Black Maw disintegrated into space. There was no going back now. "We won," she whispered, her voice hollow. But at what price? The silence was deafening. The galaxy had changed. And humanity would have to live with the consequences. Alara stood before the shattered remains of the Black Maw. The flagship of the Galactic Empire, once a symbol of untouchable power, was now a crumbling wreck in the vastness of space. She felt the weight of victory pressing down on her shoulders, but it wasn't a triumph that felt like a win. Instead, it felt like something much darker. Something humanity would never fully understand. The Aegis remained in orbit, circling the remains of the Empire's once indomitable flagship. Her crew was busy recovering from the chaos. The immediate threat had been neutralized, but Alara's mind raced. She had unleashed the Annihilation Protocol, a weapon designed to tear the fabric of the Empire from the inside out. And it had worked. But it had also left something raw. A gaping hole in the air, a silence where answers used to be. "Captain, we've got a problem," her communications officer interrupted her thoughts. "Incoming transmission from the Imperial High Command." Alara's eyes narrowed. She knew they weren't done yet. The death of the Black Maw would send ripples through the Empire, but it would not kill the beast. Not completely. The Empire was a sprawling network, a web of countless factions, all still operating in the shadows. "Put it through," she ordered, her voice low, sharp. A crackling sound filled the room, followed by the unmistakable presence of Emperor Zarates. His voice came through, calm yet filled with the weight of authority that could shatter any world. "Alara Kincaid," he began, his tone more calculating than angry. "You have destroyed the Black Maw, but you have made a grave mistake. The Empire does not fall because of one ship. The Empire does not crumble under your rage. Your small victory is meaningless." Alara's jaw tightened. "You think this is over, Zarates? You think your Empire will survive after everything you've done?" Zarates' laughter came through, dark and ominous. "I don't think anything. I know what will happen. You have unleashed something terrible, something irreversible. But in the end, it will be your own destruction. Your fragile human rage will consume you as it consumes everything." Alara clenched her fists. She had already destroyed one fleet, shattered their command structure, and wiped their flagship off the map. But Zarates' words had a weight she couldn't shake. Was he right? Could humanity's unchecked fury be their downfall? "You're wrong," Alara said, her voice hardening. "The Empire thought we were weak, but we've shown you what happens when we fight. We don't just fight. We annihilate. And I will make sure the Empire understands that." Another laugh, colder this time. "You may have destroyed the Black Maw, Kincaid. But you will not destroy the Empire. You will not destroy me." The transmission cut off, and Alara's hands rested on the cold metal of the console. A silence fell over her, but it was different this time. The victory felt less sweet, less earned. The Empire wasn't just a force of technology or military might. It was a force of will. And Zarates was no ordinary ruler. He was a being shaped by centuries of power, willing to crush everything in his way to maintain control. "Captain," her officer's voice broke the silence again. "We've picked up something. A fleet. coming from the outer rim. It's enormous. I'm guessing it's another reinforcement. Alara turned to face the crew. How much time do we have? Less than 2 hours, the officer replied. They're closing fast. We won't let them regroup, Alara said, her voice a razor's edge. Get us ready for another fight. We won't let this victory be in vain. The Aegis shifted into position, its weapons charging. The crew was already preparing for another battle, but Alara's mind kept drifting back to Zarades' words. He was confident. Too confident. But why? What did he know that she didn't? Her thoughts were interrupted by the call from the tactical officer. Captain, the fleet is much larger than we anticipated. It's not just reinforcements. It's a full assault force. And they've got something we haven't seen before. Something different. Alara's heart raced as the sensor readings began to flood her console. Massive warships, far larger than anything the Empire had sent before, emerged from the depths of space. These weren't just ships. They were massive, armored juggernauts, bristling with weapons, their hulls reinforced with materials Alara couldn't even begin to analyze. The Empire had sent their last, desperate move, a fleet built for nothing less than total annihilation. Target them, Alara said, her voice sharp and commanding. We're not backing down. The crew sprung into action, each member moving with the precision of a well-oiled machine. The Aegis fired its first salvo of missiles, but the enemy ships easily countered, their shields shimmering in the darkness of space. The Empire had come prepared. This wasn't a battle they were willing to lose. Captain, they're using a new type of shield, the tactical officer reported. It's absorbing everything we throw at them. It's like nothing we've encountered before. Alara's mind raced. What kind of weapon could they have developed? They were adapting faster than she could process. And that realization hit her hard. Zarades had planned for this. He had anticipated our every move. She felt a moment of doubt creeping into her thoughts, but she quickly dismissed it. No. I will not back down. Humanity will not fall. Activate the Annihilation Matrix, she commanded, her voice cold and clear. We'll give them a taste of what it means to face us. The Matrix hummed to life again, the familiar rush of energy coursing through the ship. The power of human rage, survival, and destruction surged forward, aimed at the heart of the Empire's new fleet. The first blast struck one of the enemy ships. For a moment, it seemed as though the blast would disintegrate it. But the new shields absorbed the energy. The enemy ship didn't even flinch. Instead, it countered with devastating force, its weapons tearing into the Aegis's hull. We're losing power, the officer yelled. Shields are down to 20%. We need to pull back. But Alara didn't move. Her eyes were locked on the Empire's fleet. They weren't retreating. Humanity never retreated. Push forward, Alara shouted, ignoring the warnings. We end this here. Her heart pounded in her chest as the Aegis surged forward, weapons firing with deadly intent. Each shot felt like a piece of her soul was being ripped away. The Empire had forced humanity to this point. They had driven them to the edge, and now, humanity would show them just how dangerous a cornered animal could be. The Aegis shook violently as it took another hit, but Alara refused to relent. We're going to win, she told herself. We have to win. The final wave of energy from the Matrix pulsed forward, but this time, it wasn't just directed at the enemy ships. It reached deeper, tapping into the core of their leadership. Zarades' voice, cold and distant, crackled over the comms once more. You will never win, Kincaid. Your destruction will be your own undoing. But Alara was done listening to him. With one final, decisive command, she launched everything they had at the enemy. The Aegis fired, the Matrix unleashing the last of its fury. For a moment, there was nothing but silence. Then, the Empire's fleet shattered. Their ships disintegrated into nothing. The remaining forces scattered in panic. Alara watched, breathless, as the once unimaginable power of the Empire crumbled in front of her. But even as she stood victorious, a part of her knew the truth. Humanity's rage had won the battle, but at what cost? She couldn't help but wonder what the future held. Would they become just like the empire they had destroyed? Would they too become a shadow of their former selves? Mission complete, her officer said, breaking through her thoughts. The fleet is destroyed. Alara stood silent, her mind heavy. We've won. But at what cost? The destruction of the Empire's fleet was not a victory. It felt like the silence after a storm, a hollow emptiness that clung to the air, heavy with the weight of what had just transpired. Alara Kincaid stood alone in the command room of the Aegis, staring at the view screen as the remains of the once mighty fleet drifted into the dark void of space. The stars beyond seemed colder now, as though they too mourned the loss of something fundamental. The cost of this battle wasn't just in lives, it was in something deeper. Something irreversible. The officers around her were speaking, their voices muffled, but Alara couldn't focus on their words. The destruction had been total. The Empire was no more. Yet something gnawed at her. What had they truly won? Captain, her second-in-command called out, snapping her back to the present. The fleet is in ruins. We've confirmed the last of their warships are disabled. The Empire is finished. Alara didn't respond immediately. Instead, her gaze remained fixed on the void of space, her thoughts drifting. Is this really over? Her hand trembled slightly as she reached for the data console. The sensors confirmed what her mind already knew, the war was over. Humanity had not only survived, they had obliterated an empire that had seemed invincible. And yet, she felt no satisfaction, no pride. Only a sense of loss. Send the message, she said, her voice quiet but firm. Inform the rest of the fleet. Earth is safe, but our work here is done. The communications officer acknowledged her command and began broadcasting the message. Alara took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the last few days pressing down on her chest. They had fought for survival. They had fought to prove that humanity would not be crushed by anyone. But in doing so, had they sacrificed more than they realized? Captain, a voice broke through her thoughts. You should see this. Alara turned, walking toward the tactical console. The screen flickered to life, showing the aftermath of the final strike. The visual data displayed the now empty space where the Empire's flagship had once stood. But it wasn't just empty. There was something else, something Alara hadn't expected. What is that? She asked, leaning closer to the screen. The officer hesitated before responding. A distress signal. It's coming from the heart of their command ship. Her pulse quickened. Is anyone alive? That's unclear, Captain. But the signal is still active. It's the last transmission from the Imperial High Command. Alara's mind raced. The Empire was defeated. Zarates was dead. Or at least, she had assumed he was. Why would there be a distress signal? What could be left to salvage? She motioned for the officer to trace the signal. A few moments passed before the screen began to change, showing fragmented data and broken communications. But then, something more appeared, a face. It was a hologram, flickering and distorted, but the features were unmistakable. The Emperor, Zarates, his face cold and emotionless. Alara Kincaid, the distorted voice spoke, as though it were emerging from the depths of a nightmare. You think you've won. But you've made a terrible mistake. Alara's breath caught. Zarates, she muttered, her voice a mixture of disbelief and fury. I thought you were dead. The image of Zarates glowed eerily on the screen. Dead? Do you think I could die so easily, human? I am the Empire. I am its will. And now, you have become part of something far darker than you understand. Alara clenched her fists, her mind racing. What does he mean? What had they truly destroyed? What are you talking about? You believe you have crushed me, Zarates continued, his voice filled with a cold certainty. But you've only awakened what I left behind. The Empire wasn't just a government, it was an ideology, a system of control. And you, Illyra, are now part of it. The Empire's will has no end. It never dies. You've become me. The hologram flickered again, and for a moment, the figure of Zarates seemed to vanish, replaced by an ominous symbol, the Empire's crest, etched into the blackness of space. Illyra's heart pounded in her chest as she realized what he was saying. You've created something much worse than the Empire, Captain, the voice echoed through the transmission, and you will see it soon enough. Your victory is only the beginning. The signal cut off abruptly. The screen went blank. Silence filled the room. Illyra stared at the now blank screen, her mind reeling. The words echoed in her ears, louder than ever. The Empire's will has no end. What had they unleashed? What had humanity become? The officers around her were silent, watching her intently. They could see the shift in her expression, the way her certainty had faltered. The war was over, but the questions remained. What was left after the destruction? Was humanity truly victorious, or had they, in their drive to survive, become something just as monstrous as the empire they had destroyed? Illyra turned to face her crew, her eyes cold. Prepare for immediate departure, she ordered. We're heading to Earth. Her second-in-command looked at her with a mixture of concern and uncertainty. Captain, what about the remains of the Empire? Shouldn't we? No, Illyra interrupted. There's nothing left for us here. We've done enough. The silence was deafening as the crew began to follow her orders. But Illyra couldn't shake the feeling that Zarates was right. That the war wasn't truly over. That humanity had become something far worse than they had ever imagined. The Aegis began its journey back to Earth, leaving the wreckage of the Empire behind. But the victory felt hollow. The destruction had been complete. The enemy was gone. Yet the true cost was still unknown. As Earth loomed ahead, Illyra felt a pang of uncertainty. She had led her people to survive. She had fought for them. But now, she wondered, what would be left of humanity after everything? Would they ever be the same again? Or had they become part of something darker, something inevitable? The ship moved toward Earth, its engines humming, its path uncertain. Illyra stared out into the endless void, a cold resolve in her heart. Victory had come at a price. And that price would haunt humanity forever.